I think we're curious to learn about some of the different approaches that you take. So you shared a couple I wanted to dig into a little bit. So you mentioned somebody said, "Oh, can you help me with public speaking and speaking at a conference?" So then what does that support look like? What's your approach to help their growth there?
Public speaking in itself is something that's very near and dear to my heart because I absolutely abhor public speaking, yet it's something that I do and seem to be kind of okay at. But it really is around breaking it down into a series of steps and trying to understand. You're never going to like it, right? So but that doesn't mean you can't learn to do it.
Mm,
How I started with one engineer on my team, where we started from, I was like, well, let's just talk about size. Being able to talk in a team meeting of 12 or 15 people is different than an all hands of 400 people. My first month at Netflix, I was asked to present in like a 400 plus all hands meeting. And at that point, I'd never done any real public speaking. I was like, what? So you don't want to start there. So generally I said, okay, why don't we, in 3 months, you're going to come to the team meeting and you're going to present on something. Let's figure out what that is. We literally whiteboarded like a bunch of different topics. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this?
hmm.
And said, this seems like a good one. This seems like something you want to talk about. Okay. So then I walked him through kind of how I prepare. I was like, you have to find the way that works for you. This is what I do. What I do is I always start with the outline. I have a lot of thoughts and I need to organize them in some way. So I always start with an outline and I always start with the most important things. What do I want? What are the 3 things I want someone to take away from this conversation? No matter what I say, whether it's a 5-minute conversation or talk or a 45-minute talk, what are the 3 things? And then the whole talk is built around making sure that those things are consistently reinforced, right? So we talked through what that might look like, what an outline might look like. He's not an outline person, but I'm like, this is one way you could do it. I don't care how you do it.
Yep.
But the thing is, like, what you're really trying to get is clarity of thought. What are you trying to teach people? What are you trying to convey? And making sure you never lose that. Now, in a month, come back
Yeah.
with something and then let's talk. And then literally we would practice. First, we went through the content, then we went through the presentation and what have you. And when he felt a little more kind of comfortable. So I think it's good with this sort of stuff, to have an end date. You work backwards, because if you don't, it'll just continue to go on. Having that forcing function is really helpful. That one is very easy to kind of break down structurally what you need to do.
Hmm. That's great. I think it kind of, then I imagine it's almost like your conspirators together in your one-on-ones. Like, okay, let's plot and plan how to prepare for this conversation
Absolutely.
together.
Especially when you're it's different when you're talking about, sometimes I will start people off with present a project you did, right? Something where it's a little easier mode, because you don't have to think about how to create something of substance from the beginning. You already
Mhm.
know why the thing you did was important. Now you're just kind of evangelizing it. Sometimes that's a good interim step, but he'd already kind of done stuff like that, which is why I'm like, let's figure out what do you want the team to know, right? He ended up doing a presentation on TVUI, which is kind of the operating system of the Netflix player on TV. We call it TVUI. And so my team at that time supported all platforms, so web, TV, and mobile. And he was one of the TV engineers, and he really loved the platform. And there was a lot of reticence from the web people to work on it, because they're just like, oh God, it's just really constricting. So he wanted to kind of no, this is why TV's great. Developing on TV is great. So I'm like, then you're passionate about it. Let's talk about that then.
Besides public speaking, are there other examples of skills that your team member came up to you they want to learn?
Outside of that stuff, definitely more technical things. For example, like I said, I had an engineer who had been doing a bunch of web work also, and had been doing, he kind of a little bit of a cheat, had been doing some React Native, but hadn't been doing native, and had really wanted to get more into Android development. So in that case, because he already had a bit of a background, even if it was already 50% of the way there, then it was really about identifying a project he could work on. I think a lot of this, I didn't say this before, but I think when it comes to the technical skill acquisition, it also depends on how much time that person has put in on their own before we've gotten here, right? When someone's starting from scratch, oh, I want to learn Rust, but I'm a UI engineer. That's a little harder, right? For me to, well, I will support that. And here's some classes you can, you know what I mean? But I can't, we don't have projects like that, right? So that's a little harder for me to do. It's not impossible, but it is going to be, that's going to require kind of the buy-in from another team, if at all possible. And then also depending on the project, sometimes people really they can't onboard like that. In those instances, I actually had this happen in my current role. One of the members of my team really wanted to mentor engineers, and I had a pretty senior team. And so there
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that. But we had a sister team where the engineer had been a Python developer and wanted to spend more time learning Java. So I ended up hooking them up. You're not going to be doing this at work, but this person wants to mentor and you want to learn. Why don't you guys set up, some like weekly or monthly meetings and like work on a project together, right? And they were both like, yes. A lot of times it really is just kind of connecting people.
That's great. I love the dot connecting component.
Yeah. And so with the Android thing, what I ended up doing was there was a project I knew one of the sister teams was working on. And I said, look, I like this person, you already, he's kind of a known quantity for this other work. I think if bugs, small features, like if there's anything that you can give him to kind of to actually get some hours into this, that would be great. And I was like, I will loan him to you for a quarter to do that. So that's kind of what we did.
So in a way, what I take from that example is that roles or responsibilities engineering leaders do on a regular basis is to look out for all the opportunities in terms of project, in terms of support, coaching, or people that can help some of your team members grow in ways they want it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I try to keep it's a little, I know we haven't talked a little about leadership kind of growth because that one is the really hard one.
Yeah.
But like in that realm, I do keep kind of a handful of other leaders that I know at different levels that are kind of like on call for me. Like, where I'm like, hey, can you go talk? Can you meet with my engineer for a conversation about this thing or what have you? Because I can't remember if it was Laura Hogan or there was that Voltroning your manager article that kind of came out where there's the expectation that your manager can be all things is not it's not really possible. So you should be able to pull from different leaders. And I strongly believe in that. But I go one step further and I try to do it for my team. Here are the things I'm really good at and can help you. Here are the things I don't have experience, but that person does, and they can help you.